Guys, Brian Neubert here again from goldenblack.com, live in the old home workspace. It is Tuesday, May 19th. This is your goldenblack.com Daily Quarantine Simulcast, our daily uphill battle to provide you some level of Purdue conversation each and every day, whether it be at goldenblack.com, our social media channels, YouTube, or our podcast platform at Golden Black Radio. This is brought to you by Fawlts Purdue Bookstores, Purdue Federal Credit Union, the 6th Street Dive Restaurant, First Source Bank, East End Grill, and the Charters Team Remax Ability Plus. Want to remind you once again, if you're looking for a great dinner or to simply support our local businesses through this complicated time, please keep in mind the 6th Street Dive in Lafayette, East End Grill in Lafayette, Arnie's in Lafayette, West Lafayette, and all over the state, Bruno's in the Levee, and the Whitaker Inn out by me here in West Lafayette. If you're accessing this video via YouTube, at some point in time, the world's going to start to spin again. You will want to access our Purdue material that doesn't involve looking at me every day as soon as possible. So please hit that subscribe button if you can. The struggle is real here, as I've told you guys, in terms of coming up with a daily topic here. I consulted the list of topics some of you sent me some time ago for this. Some of them are good, some of them maybe not so good. But a couple of them touched on recruiting, and specifically recruiting rankings and how they work. And I know that I've gotten that question a lot over the years. What do you guys know? How does this process work? You just hate my team. That's why you rank these players the way you do. You hate my team. Well, people are often very interested in the behind closed doors machinations of the recruiting rankings process. We're obviously aligned with Rivals.com. We have been since its inception. Rivals is one of a couple of networks out there, a couple of organizations that do this. 24/7 Sports is the other prominent one out there these days. So I thought what I would do was just take hopefully 8 minutes to discuss recruiting rankings here. They are subjective. Obviously, they are one man's opinion, one organization's opinion, or an organization's opinion based on the opinions of many, many men and people who are involved in this. The same way, if Rolling Stone ranked, the top 100 Bruce Springsteen songs of all time, which would make my head explode, or some clickbait advertising endeavor would put something up about the 25 most mind-blowing moments in How I Met Your Mother. Once again, all completely subjective, all the opinion of one group of the many who make up that group, and totally subjective, which is fine. I always say it is for entertainment purposes above all else. Don't take it too seriously. Don't invest yourself emotionally in them because you will be setting yourself up for disappointment. Football and basketball are very different sports, although they are becoming a little bit more of the same because the football summer scene has become increasingly engaging in terms of there being a lot more camps, a lot more clinics, a lot more combines, a lot more 7-on-7 stuff, which is sort of becoming the grassroots basketball of the football scene, a lot more opportunities to see players live in the off season. And all of us have put an unbelievable priority, emphasis on seeing players live, actually standing up in front of them, seeing how big they are, sizing them up, watching them perform in person, because that is a much better opportunity to see what they're all about than is a huddle video, potentially on low definition on your screen. So a great emphasis is put on, and great effort is made for us in basketball and football alike now to see these players live. Football and basketball are very different, however. The numbers are extraordinarily different from football to basketball. Football, I can speak to Rivals.com here, and I know everybody else is the same way. Football requires regional analysts, people in charge of certain segments of the country, responsible for knowing the players there, knowing what's going on in the recruitments, but more so knowing them as players so that they can bring a really informed level of expertise to the table when the Avengers unite here when the Avengers assemble, I should say, to compile the final overall rankings or the overall rankings period. In basketball, you get many more opportunities for all the best players to be under the same roof, whether that's the Nike scene in AAU/grassroots, the Adidas scene, Under Armour, any number of different all-star games. During the high school season, you got a lot of events where the best high school teams travel to play one another. There's just so many more opportunities to see the best players. So you can do it in basketball with 2 or 3 people, typically. So football and basketball are very different animals in that sense. People often say, hey, what qualifies you guys to rank players? You didn't play. You didn't coach. That's often true. But the people who are doing this have invested their careers in it. It is their career. It is what they dedicate their time to. It is what they have made their teeth. They have cut their teeth doing. It qualifies them to do this every bit as much as your accountant to do your taxes or to do your financial planning, whatever it may be. You went to school to do this. Well, a lot of these people trained themselves doing this. They came up, they made this their careers, they dedicated their times to doing this. I will also add, there are a lot of civilians doing the actual recruiting, especially in football. The numbers are such where this is a manpower issue, and you have people who didn't play, who didn't coach at a high level, who are making decisions, and that's simply the nature of it. That's the requirement of the beast that is football recruiting and its numbers. So there are cases where the people who are ranking players have been watching players and evaluating players longer than a lot of the people doing the actual recruiting. I don't know if people realize that or not, but that is the reality of it. And at the end of the day, a college basketball coach's opinion on a player is just one man's opinion also. And coaches are wrong all the time about players. So to say that, to disqualify outsiders' opinions on players simply because they didn't necessarily play or coach is a little bit misguided. But be that as it may, what gets players ranked? I think obviously productivity gets them ranked, but I think raw physical ability and potential obviously are things that rankers, for lack of a better term, not RANCOR, but RANKER, are going to be drawn to. I think when you go see somebody in person, the first thing that jumps out to you is going to be a very important impression you make. That is made on you, I should say. If a kid is the bigger, the stronger, the faster, the more athletic, the longer a kid is, the more you're likely to look at him and say, look at what he is now relative to look at what he's going to be here in a couple of years. That is obviously going to get a player ranked probably a little bit higher than players with some natural limitations. That does not mean there are not exceptions to the rule. Carson Edwards is a great example. He's short. He was short for his position. He didn't necessarily fit into a traditional positional bucket coming out of high school. But what he did was he got buckets. And he was not ranked going into his senior year in high school. He was ranked coming out of his senior year in high school because he had a great senior year. Obviously, people started to realize what he was capable of doing. There's other factors there, too. He played on an AAU team prior to his senior year where, he had studs all over his team. And he did not stand out the way he would have stood out had a team, been built around him. So there's a lot of that stuff that goes into play where guys get missed for that reason. But I only bring him up because he was one I think we got right. Obviously, his talent level probably was significantly higher than his ultimate ranking, but at least we got him. At least we got him ranked when all was said and done. Because our basketball people, were obviously paying attention to what he was doing as a senior in high school, which often gets missed because we put so much emphasis on the offseason. So I do give Rivals.com credit at least. I can't remember what other networks did with Carson Edwards, but I give Rivals.com a lot of credit for going back and righting a wrong there because a kid had a great senior year and people started to realize what he was. Was he still a little bit underranked relative to what he turned out to be in college? Yeah, but you can't look at it that way. You can't look at because once a kid gets to college, everything kind of resets. It's a different deal that way, to a certain extent at least. But I do think Rivals.com got him right. I only bring him up because he's a guy who had some limitations that tend to hurt someone's rankings. Obviously, one other little point I wanted to make here about this is that sometimes our coverage at goldenblack.com kind of contradicts what national people say about players. There is a reason for that. It's this. Obviously, I go to great lengths. I put great emphasis on going and seeing players myself. because I think that's the way to do right by my readers, um, the way to do right by myself. I don't want to take other people's word for stuff. I prefer, whenever possible, to have seen it for myself and tell you what I see and what I think. Um, but I also look at it. I don't look at it from a general perspective. When national people rank players, they do it generally. Here is what I think this kid is as a player. I look at it like, here is what I think this kid is at Purdue, because that is my field of expertise. Not that I would ever call myself an expert on anything, but it is my focus. I bring a good deal of I think, perspective on what Purdue likes in players, what fits at Purdue, what works at Purdue. I think I know what Matt Painter likes in a player better than any outsider on this planet. I think I've covered Purdue football recruiting long enough, the coaches at Purdue who've coached Purdue football enough to know what they like in players, to know their systems, to know what really they want in a player, to know what is most likely to work at Purdue. And I cover it from that perspective. And so if I'm telling you Dakota Mathias is going to be an impact player at Purdue, and then you go and you look at the rankings, and the rankings say, oh, well, he's number 137 in the country, he can't be that good. Well, I'm looking at it from like, okay, here's what Purdue didn't have last season. Here's what he is. And here's how he fits in. And here is why he jives totally well with Matt Painter. This is exactly what I'm telling you right now about Jaden Ivey and Ethan Morton. These guys are highly ranked guys, but also they're exactly what Purdue needs right now when you look at what last season's team ranked. So that's how I'm kind of looking at things. So that's kind of the different perspective I've always tried to bring from a recruiting perspective. Just a couple of other things about recruiting rankings real quick, a couple opinions. Being a three-star recruit is not a bad thing. It is not an insult. I think I, I think I think media sometimes tends to say, "Oh, I don't understand why Matt Painter's teams are good because they're all three-star kids." That's not a bad thing. People look at it like it's a backhanded compliment or some kind of insult. Technically, on a 2 to 5 scale, 3 is average, but that's not what three-star means. 3-star player by the definitions under which we rank players is he's a good player. Might not be a game changer, might not necessarily be viewed as a pro, but he is a good player. In terms of dropping in rankings, Ethan Morton dropped 6 spots. 6 spots. 6 spots is a salt packet in the Atlantic Ocean when it comes to salt content. It is nothing. That is a terrible analogy, but I heard Bob Knight use it once, and I thought it was fascinating. Ethan Morton dropped 6 spots, and I've seen a couple of questions bandied about it, about why he dropped so much. 6 spots is nothing. But players don't always drop in rankings because they've sucked. Players drop in rankings because other guys have excelled, and you pour more water into one side of the pool, the other side is going to... Never mind. Also, there's been some reclassifications. That's a complication in basketball where guys move classes. So when guys from 2021 move up or guys from 2019 move back, they affect the 2020 rankings. And if they're really good, like, for example, Christian Lander, who signed with Indiana, moved right into the top 25 when he moved up a year. So he moved from 21 to 20. He moved right into the 2020 top 25. That is a mouthful. So that's naturally one spot. Everybody else moves back. And there are a couple more kids like him. So when you look at the rankings, don't say, oh my God, this kid dropped 6 spots. He must have had a really awful year. That's the exact opposite of what's true. The fact that he held steady, only moved a little bit, suggests that in the opinions of the people doing the ranking, he did what he needed to do as a senior to legitimize his already pretty good ranking. So that's sort of what I've got. We don't hate your team. The media is the easiest target for everything nowadays. If we write something about a player you like that you don't like, it's because we hate that kid. If we don't rank the players at your school the way you want to see them ranked, it's because we hate your school. That's not always true. Maybe it's true every now and then on some individual's part, but industry-wide, that is simply not reality. So please don't be so lazy in your takes. Sorry, that got a little personal, but it's media is the easiest target on the planet these days. Sometimes people are made uncomfortable by things they don't want to hear, and we are the easy target in those cases. So that's what I got for today, Tuesday, May 19th. I know this was all kind of random, but the Rivals 2020 basketball rankings did come out yesterday. You should check those out. So I did want to at least bring some sort of relevance to the table because of that. I am struggling to come up with topics here. I'm going to keep battling the best I can here. But this seemed pertinent today because the Rivals.com rankings came out yesterday. So thanks everybody for watching. I appreciate it. This has been once again your GoldenBlack.com Daily Quarantine Simulcast, brought to you by Fobbs Purdue Bookstores, Purdue Federal Credit Union, the 6th Street Dive Restaurant, First Source Bank, East End Grill, and the Charters Team Remaxability Plus. If you're looking for a great dinner or to simply support our local businesses through this complicated time, please keep in mind the 6th Street Dive in Lafayette, East End Grill in Lafayette, Arnie's in Lafayette, West Lafayette, and all over the state, Bruno's on the Levee, and the Whitaker Inn out by me on my side of town here in West Lafayette. So thanks, everybody. We'll talk to you again tomorrow and every day this week and every day until this is all over. Thanks, everyone.